Like,
it's this guy.
comment, share, subscribe, follow his Instagram, his YouTube, follow my YouTube.
Buy some stickers. Buy stickers.
Shot just dropped. Big cartel. Happy birthday to this guy.
Oh, happy birthday.
5 stickers.
Yeah. Hi, my name's Aaron. Maybe Track King Racing on Instagram or YouTube, and this is what you're here to see today. It's in pieces, but it's a 2000 MR2 Spider ZZW30 chassis, and yeah, it's in pieces right now, but yeah, it's going through the full works right now and getting ready to get back to basically what we were doing, which was testing to prepare it for track use. So, well, in the past it was mainly cone dodging, SCCA stuff, just enjoying autocross. I definitely got on some tracks to do some just regular time racing, but the whole build is really geared towards technically hill climb and time attack. So that's the concept. That's the end. The end hope is to do that. Hill climb is a little bit more farther aspirational because the chance of costly damage is higher. To be frank, the whole reason why I would choose time attack is because it allows me to push the limits of the car while being relatively solo on track, and I can deem whether I want to push it for an extra second to risk putting it into the wall or just enjoy the rest of the day and ride out sometimes. So, do I look to necessarily compete with other cars in an unlimited space inside of time attack? No, because unlimited is so massive. I just want to be there. Basically everything. Once you get into chassis modifications, it usually starts to plop you into unlimited. Engine swaps plops you into, there's a lot of, not specific, not just those, just one things, but when you start to add those things up, they slam you into unlimited. And at the point where you've got a fully caged, engine swapped, custom suspensions, fully built car that is about as far away from its original form as you could get, other than still having its bare chassis in there, you're pretty much, that's where you're at. On track, we're gonna hope to push around 500 horsepower at about 9,500, 10,000 RPMs, and this thing weighs 2,200 pounds, 2,300 pounds. So this car turbocharged at the rate that the bottom end's built and everything's built. the head and everything is like stage 3 heads. It's crazy. It's literally probably outputting at minimal double of what, this car with the 2ZZ motor in there, you're talking about 190, 210 horsepower range for just the stock motor. So you add 15 pounds of boost on a well-built motor and you're instantly doubling that power number. And easily too. It's not that bad. But what you would have to do to swap the K24, I think you're starting to look at around about the same amount of money. And my, other than being a Toyota purist, not entirely, but just I like Toyotas and I wanted to stay in the Toyota family.
Like me and Hondas.
Yeah, for the money that I put into it and for the power that I wanted out of it, knowing that I didn't really need more than 500-600 horsepower, there wasn't a reason to go K24. The only reason I could see to go K24 is if I didn't want to turbocharge it and I wanted to go NA.
Or all-wheel drive.
Oh, that'd be a whole different, yep. Then I would say, V6 would have been the route that I would have went, or a K24, because that makes a lot of NA sense for this sort of build. You can put, 280, 290 horsepower pretty easily through an NA K24. So, I can see that as being a very simplistic, great track package. For me, I wanted a turbocharged car. Well, so the engine's not here, and that's good, because realistically, the engine was the way that it was or has been for several years now. Nothing was wrong with the engine. The engine was built super strong, pistons, rods. I didn't see the need in increasing the displacement, head built, blah, blah, blah. So what you're seeing now is basically what has actually been put into it in the last year and a half. Some of the biggest things would be everything got switched to push to lock, probably unnecessarily. But tell me any builds that you know of that kept the stock air system and vacuum system and then converted painfully that system into push to lock. And then I'd like to shake their hand. So that's what I did. Technically when you swap a motor and you're in North Carolina and your car is registered in South Carolina, you don't really even need to keep a lot of the emission stuff, right? But car was running so great and everything was great. I didn't want to start ripping something out, put stuff back in, and then have problems. I felt like I could clean stuff up enough and make it look, professional enough that realistically it wouldn't harm the system still having it. So I've got that to push the lock, and now if you come over here, I'll have to screw your camera up here, but the beauty of it is now everything else is push to lock too. So, where one person might kind of stop on one portion of the build, I actually have everything now, even from the ECU, I'll show you, is push to lock going all the way to here. And of course, any lines that run past heat, like over here, I got push to lock even on the wastegate. I mean, these lines are pretty darn rigid, but I'll put a sleeve over this. Any line that gets near heat, I'll put a sleeve near. But look, every single line now will be push to lock. And this now replaced a vacuum block, right? So let's see, where is it? Oh yeah, old school vacuum blocks. We know about these, right? You got it coming off one main source of the back of the manifold, and then you've got all your crazy vacuum lines, and you got these stupid connectors like all over the place, and you've got this sort of stuff, right? That is replacing all of it, right? So now that's my vacuum block. I literally drilled and tapped every single one of those, and I had my friend weld up all of the other holes, right? So now I only have the vacuum sources coming from really what I would call the purest place to grab it from, which is like a back cavity of the intake manifold. It's not disturbing the airflow, right? And all of the vacuum is coming from the same spot. So not only do I have the vacuum lines for the fuel system going to there, vacuum lines for the safety evap system going to there, I also have all of the air lines going to the turbo, to the wastegate, the blow-off valve, and then if you come over here, the big finish here is the link ECU, obviously, has manifold pressure line, and then that's literally going to be the only connector in this whole system that has to have a stupid worm drive, and my autism kills me. But yeah, so that's a small thing, right? I mean, I'd say that's a small thing, but that took a lot of work. I'm also in the midst of rewiring the entire car because I didn't have to, and yet I still did. The main reasons behind the full rewiring was, one, again, didn't have to, but I wanted to. I wanted to clean up the engine bay, right? So if we go back there now, because I didn't have to and I wanted to, I ran all of the wires, re-cleaned up all the wires and ran them through the frame. So now I've got wires running through the frame over there, wires running through the frame right here, all coming from the front of the ECU inside of the engine compartment. So now they used to run all along the inside of here, right? And muddy up all that, so now they're not, which is great. For me, thinking about it, a lot of people might say, oh, well, now you can't access them. Well, I can access them. There's actually holes along the frame inside of here along the way. So if I need to, I can pop in there, access, see if I need to test the line, blah, blah, blah. But realistically for me, it was keeping them out of the way of fire hazards, oil, anything, right? How many times have I had leaks, spills in here, issues, and now all of a sudden I'm having to clean up wires, I'm having to clean up other stuff, and it just ends up all dripping to the connector, fouling a connector, and screwing you up on a race day later on. So the thought was get him out of the way, don't have to deal with it. If there was a fire or something like that or an issue and it was a flash and the suppression system puts it out, I don't have to rewire everything. And speaking of fire, that was one of the other bigger things is, getting into the bigger leagues, and again, not saying that I'm there, but just knowing that I'm going to be racing at higher speeds and I'm going to be doing things in this car that are going to be dangerous. Having just one fire extinguisher overhead, I mean, maybe that would save me, right? But as many people say, fire suppression systems aren't meant to save the car, they're meant to save the driver. screw that. Like this is really like, this is my soul for a long time. And even before I was building this, you know, I was dreaming about building it. So for a person like myself who has a lot of mental issues, this becomes an identity for yourself, you know. So I've got some nozzles inside here in the engine department and compartment. And what you've got to think of is that here's the turbo, right here, which it's an oilless turbo. So no oil is getting there anyway, but it is also something that could cause extra heat and could cause a fire or something like that, right? So got a nozzle over on this side shooting this direction, fanning out, right? It's a gas, so it shoots high and drops low. And then I've got one over here. This is where the oil cooler is. So realistically, if there was an oil fire, it would be coming from this side, right? And then this is the other side of the engine, so it's fanning out this way and dropping down. The thought process here is 2 nozzles in here cover the engine. I've got the fire suppression now going into here, in which, by the way, if you couldn't tell, obviously, I have all of the fire suppression lines running through the chassis as well. So I don't have to put any fire safe line covers over the lines because the lines are inside the chassis, so they're not going to get reached by the fire. So again, it was all kind of a thought process to keep the line safe, but also keep it nice and clean, pulling the engine in and out, you know. Yeah, right. Everything that I'm trying to do moving forward is quick disconnect and just not to have any sort of snags or anything like that. So I thought that was a good idea. But everything's going to come from this central bottle right here, the only reason why things aren't hooked up is because I'm still pulling things in and out, and they're kind of quick disconnects. It's a novelty phrase, right? But they're not as quick as they say. So yeah, built a secondary firewall. This firewall will still be covered. I have a cover for this area, but this is an access panel to make it easier to get to the back of the engine. I mean, that's just as simple as it is. But at the same time, I installed this down there with some nice bracing, installed all this line in. So now I've got 2 lines that go out in front and spray down, which if you think about it, there should never be any fire coming from the front, right? So that's what makes these, people don't understand, these chassis aren't just great to race because of weight balance, because of engine placement, blah, blah, blah. They're also extremely safe. If you're driving forward and the fire is behind you, you can actually keep going. You get what I mean, right? If the fire is in front of you, ask anyone who's been in a front engine car who's been in a fire where they get burnt. Feet, hands, face. And why? Fire happens here, they keep driving, and the fire enters the cockpit, right? So, you know, it's nice having it back here. It's nice having 2 firewalls, not just a factory firewall, but a secondary firewall that I built myself. And then it also has a nozzle spraying on the fuel compartment, the fuel cell, which is now outside being cleaned because I just, I got to keep adding things to the list, right? So realistically, I'll probably just run a very high octane race gas. I don't like necessarily running E85. I don't like having to have secondary fuel systems. I don't like a lot of those other things that have to go along with running E85, even though my system is completely capable of running E85. But for what we saw, I was running like 91 octane and we were still pushing power at 10,000 RPM. So I didn't see a problem with fuel. Most people know or don't know that OEM fuel cells aren't meant to take harsher fuel types, right? So
that's why when you run like E85, you need to replace.
Yep, it starts to crackle all the stuff in there, and even the coatings that are in those fuel cells, they're just not made for it. So what I'll do is I'll clean that all out. I'll put a new coating in, wash it around in there, let it sit, and then it'll be good for other fuels moving forward. Yeah, so got the fire suppression in, got all my pulls, inside pulls, outside pulls, again, along with the rewiring. I'm making sure that I had the proper things that I need for track. I've got a proper on-off switch inside, it's a proper on-off switch outside. Here's my pull for the fire suppression system on the outside. There's the pull for the fire suppression inside. I'm going to create a nice little box around this so that way if I blow a tire or something, it doesn't take all that with it. Even though it is pretty high and tight under the fender, I can put the fender on and it's pretty snazzy. It kind of sneaks out there a little bit. They like you to try to put them up here on top, but it takes a lot of work to get them there, so I'm hoping that that's going to pass. I did all the wires nice. I put a fuse in there, simple things like stuff like this, just make life easier. All the wires coming through the firewall, so much better. Took out a lot of wires for the OEM wire system that I don't need. I mean, there's still some clusters going on. But just cleaning things up, making the system simplified, making the system easily either viewable or accessible, if not viewable, right, like in the back, and moving things forward. Another big thing, as you can see here, is V-mounting the radiator. A lot of people actually thought that this was already done. It ended up being one of the easier projects. I mean, I'm not done with it, but these guys right here go up and attach to here with rivet nuts. And then this right here is going to be cut out of here to be welded in. And then I'll fold up the bottom to create like more of a structure under it. And then that'll basically be a new bottom chassis mount for the radiator. And then obviously the diffuser will suck right to that. Yeah, it's going to be pretty nice. Or splitter, sorry. But the splitter will have the wheel diffusers. I'm going to build in some wheel diffusers on it. Splitter is going to go through a redesign. The end plates are going to be a little bit wider. I've seen some kind of new technology on the vortex generators that I want to play with. So, but yeah, next we'll be boxing all this out. Creating some kind of divider planes, right, to make sure that the air gets to both directions well. Boxing out either side. And then any extra air that I want to have pass through, I might do some like rubber flaps on the side here to allow pass through at like really fast speeds. And they'll go through the outside vents. And then everything else I already have templates made to basically have this seat right into there and vent right out the top. So this has dual fans on the back, and is a dual plate, and then this is a Honda race radiator. Yeah, right. One Honda part. So some of the crazier things that I've done since the rebuild too, or at least going to do. So you can see the radiator lines, right, going all the way front to back, because obviously the engine's in the back, right. All the other lines, water lines, are AN fittings. So now I'm gonna pull those pipes off, have those welded up, and those will be AN lines. This will get AN lines welded to it. This will get AN lines welded to it. The cool thing about these pipes, right? Those were the AC heater core pipes that were already under the car. So these are hard lines that I'm reusing because I don't have AC, that run the whole length of the car and then pop out, just happen to be right where my intercooler is. And just happened to be the same 1-inch lines that I was using for, yeah. A few random things, charging ports, things you don't think of, but you know, on race day, you know, when you come back into the pits, you're often screwing with things, you're messing with tunes, you know what I mean? And your car runs out of battery when you're running like a little small race battery, right? So to have charging ports, I'll have my little charger set up in my trailer. And then it'll just pull it in, and again, I can put the fenders on and show you, but the fenders come out to right here, and you can just come in and click your chargers on right there, and they'll charge while you're chilling. I've had this suspension, this is probably the 3rd iteration of suspension that I've had, and maybe the 5th iteration of the actual coils. Most people are running like 600-700 pound springs on these things, because again, the car is only 2,200 pounds, so not a big deal. But you'd be surprised to know that I'm running 900 pound springs in the front, 1,200 pound springs in the rear. Yeah. It is crazy the amount of downforce that this car generates. When I have this car clicked to soft, I can bottom out the tires easy at the ride height that it wouldn't bottom out if I had it at full hard. You've seen it throughout the progression of the car, meaning originally with the car I just had a front splitter, right? And then I had a front splitter full underbody. And then I had a front splitter full underbody wing. Then I had a full splitter, full underbody wing, full massive diffuser, which is this guy under here that you can't see, it's massive. And then you add on all the other things, the canards, the vortex generators, and stuff like that, and it definitely makes a huge difference. So brakes are standard brakes with just upgraded pads and rotors, stop techie type stuff. I mean, it seemed to work well. I could definitely see upgrading in the future, again, because of the amount of speed that we're going to end up having. Continue to move around, you know, you say point out big things. Obviously, cage is a big thing. Carbon fiber top is a big thing. We'll eventually replace that with a fastback. That's the end goal. But yeah, I got some gauges, redoing my center cluster there. I'm going to move everything up. Some of those bottom things were actually a little hard to get to when you're strapped in. So since I removed the AC, I'm going to replace all of this with like a nice metal panel up there, clear out all the stuff on the bottom, and then move all my switches up. So I'm in the process of doing that. Also just got a new fuse box down there. That's going to be for, you know, I've got 5 auxiliary fans in this thing, between the radiator fans, the condenser fan for the heat exchanger, the fan for the oil cooler, and then I have 2 fans that are on the deck lid, which, again, I told you, everything's spread out everywhere. So here's the deck lid, I don't know if you remember that.
Don't hit my car, please.
Deck lid, and then the 2 auxiliary fans there, right? So plus the pump, right? So I've got the water pump, and then I've got, what else is on there? The transmission cooler pump. So transmission cooler pump, water pump, and all the auxiliary fans all will be going through now that new fuse box, and that's a part of the rewiring too. So all this, so this is now fully built. It's got hardened gears that I've actually had treated in shot peens and cryo treated, even though they were already hardened replacement gears, right? So I even sent those off to get treated. It's got carbon fiber clutch pads. I mean, it's fully built, so this should be able to do some good work. It's a 6-speed. It runs pretty dang good. This is another big one, Wood Sport. Paul Woods, he's hooked me up in the last year too. This was I'd been begging many companies to make this. This is a lowered subframe for the back, and basically now allows me to lower the car so I could be scrubbing the floor and still have great suspension telemetry, right? So yeah, so now when I go to the track, I could have my diffuser and splitter literally like just picking up rocks, and can still have good suspension setup there, which is really nice. It's got a lot of different pickup points. So that's going to be cool to get in there. I didn't have that one before, so that's going to be, I mean, there's so many cool, you know, like this Fat House, you know, this is a massive catch can, right, system that's going to be working in it, you know, and even them, you know, I approached them as like, hey, you want to be a sponsor? And like, we don't do that. And I was like, oh, you got any like cans that are in the bin? And he was like, what do you mean in the bin? I was like, you know, ones that you had to scrap. And he was like, yeah, actually I do. And I was like, well, mine's for a custom setup, so I'll just have you add some bungs to it, and then I'll take one you got in the bin. He hooked me up with a super good price, added some bungs to it. So this is for a Lotus Elise, so I had to cut this up a little bit to make this work inside of here, but ended up doing good. It's a swirl pot, so it actually has like a swirly type of bottom to it. Look, I was an engineer for 16 years, and yet I'm going to say a swirly type of bottom. But at the same time,
it's got the thingy.
It's got the thingy. Just had all this coated next door. Vic's Auto Body again. He's the man. Vic is the jam. He welds up everything for me. I'll bring him pieces like this and be like, sir, please weld, right? And he calls me up the next day and he goes, welded. And I say, how much? And he goes, 15. 15 what? 15 bucks. Here you go, man, you know? So yeah, so he all these welds you see, you know, this is all him. He's done all this, but you know, we'll start here. This is the valve cover. Normally, this is where the ports come out. So had those ports welded up, cut in some new ports, cut out all the baffling on the inside. So those ports now will pop out right here, of course, which will feed this one, and this one will come around and feed the backside port. So like I said, man, if this car was going to be down for a year and a half, I went crazy Audi HD on this thing and was like, nah, we're going to everything's going to be right, you know, so obviously even got everything to match here. I'm not even a matchy person, but there I went it. So we already talked about all the push connects there, but even this inside ported, right? I've done all the port work myself, and throttle body ported again, welded up all the ports that I don't need. Added the HD clamps, because these days if you don't have HD clamps, you're just crazy, right? And then air to water intercooler, again, HD clamps and bungs, of course. Turbo Smart Raceport, not a sponsor, but honestly, Turbo Smart's like, it's like there's the exhaust, right? I mean, you know, and that's the wastegate dump tube. So those are going to be welded together, and actually will get dumped through the diffuser. So, you know, most people don't know it's called the blown diffuser. Yeah, so yeah, end result is that'll get welded onto there. This will also get teardropped off, and then both of these will actually run flush into the bottom of the diffuser. So the air coming out from the bottom of the car actually helps scavenge out the exhaust, which is, you know, you don't want the exhaust building up in this, you know, back pressure is not what you want here. So it'll end up pulling it out. It'll also end up heating up the air that's coming off the diffuser, which is pretty cool, because I don't know if you know, I think it's Bernoulli's principle or something like that, but heated air moves faster, right? So therefore you actually get a better effect of pulling air over the diffuser too, so it actually makes more downforce since the air is hotter. At least that's the thought process of it all. Here is the comp Oilless turbo. And you know, Oilless turbos, if you don't know how they work, they just use packed grease. So here's a Zerk fitting, and you just put a grease gun on it. Right here, grease gun. I've actually done a video on my YouTube because people really don't know a lot about these, and you just pump it full of grease.
So what size are you running?
This is a 2981, so like old school disco potato size, right? Because it's the perfect mesh of the two turbos. So, you know, it's got a 3-inch housing still, which is pretty nice. And as you can see, we welded a little bit of an exaggeration to that. I think it was originally 1.5 inch out. Now it's 2.5 inch out. Obviously HD clamp. Obviously push to connect on there as well, because we're crazy. And then also had Vicks powder coat it too. So kind of going for like a titanium kind of silver look. But it's pretty rad. I mean, these casings are awesome. I ran this thing even completely dry to the fact where it was making horrible noises out at a meet. Had to drive 30 minutes back, pumped oil in it. It's been great ever since, right? So it's really unique. I wish I could show you it, but I got my screen in there. I'll talk about that in a second. But when you have this packed full of grease, you can't turn the compressor.
I've seen that.
Most people would think that it's broke because they're like, oh my God, it can't spin freely. But as it heats up, the casing heats up, the grease heats up, and then it allows it to spin freely. So it's such tight tolerances that it actually needs the grease to heat up even to spin. And that's what actually makes it more performance, because the tighter tolerances you can have, then you're not having any slop in it, right? But the cool thing is that HD clamped on, if you look inside of there, you'll see a screen. So I made what I call like a little plate wafer. And that little plate wafer can take any sort of screen. So meaning, like, you know, this is a certain micron mesh screen. I could put a bigger screen. I could put a smaller screen. I could put a water filtration screen on there if I want to, or run no screen at all. And all I have to do is just take off the HD clamp, pull off my little bell mouth, and then put the new screen in. You know, just a little way of like me maybe regulating, you know, the debris that gets in there, but also keeping it fairly free breathing, you know. A lot of this stuff, all Treadstone, and again, like Treadstone is a definite sponsor of the of the build. Like they're like Treadstone, 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 Treadstone. All this, all my failed pipes, Treadstone. All my AN pipes, Treadstone. I mean, they are like, they're gangsters.
That's fancy. That's fancy.
We're not here for this, but Treadstone, 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 Treadstone. Like, I mean, like seriously, all the fittings, all the things, anything that's been welded on, you know, all these pipes, intakes, all these things, all Treadstone, all welded up next door. I would say of all the sponsors of the build, they have been the most consistent in like being a true sponsor. Like there's a X amount off that I get, and it is epic. And anything that I put in my cart, that's what I get. Good question. All right, so engine build right now is over with Daniel. Do you know Daniel with the MR2? Just got his painted. Yep. Yeah, he's such a great guy. Another fantastic person. Spicy Rice Motorsports. Great gentleman. He's helping me out. It needs a sticker. He's helping me out with the rebuild. And again, nothing really happened to the engine other than it getting crushed from the outside. So really we're just swapping all the internals over to another freaking casing. But that's still quite a big job. He's taking that on for me. He's expecting that to be done this month. So the engine comes back. I put on the new goodies. We get you to come over and take some video and photos of that, right? Have it on an engine stand. It'll look all good. Get the transmission put on it. The cool thing is I'm not sure if you've ever seen like a Lotus or MR2 get dropped, but you assemble it all onto the frame.
And then you drop the car on top.
Yep, and then you drop the car on top of it, right? So, and I mean, you know, we've had this hanging here. You know, I've rewrapped this stock harness that's been adjusted a few times, but I took all the, you know, that crap that's on there from the OEM harness. Even here, all these, right? All those were rewrapped. So I would say, look, if engine comes back to me by the end of this month, by the end of next month, I'll have everything ready to go back in, right? That's giving me a full month respectfully to put, you know, all the bits back on, all the belts back on. Yeah, it's a good bit. You know, I only have a little bit of time every other day to do it, right? Other than that, though, in that 2-month period, I will have finished my firewall, finished the rewiring, right? Finished all of the AN connections that need to be welded up, and will be hopefully even resprayed. Don't quote me on this, even though you're filming me. One actual solid color. Yeah, mind blowing. Maybe except the hard top. I'll keep that carbon fiber for a little bit. I'm just not used to the nicety of it, right? At the end of the day, I could say maybe 3 months solid, you know, to get this thing literally back on the road. 3 months. 3 months. That's my quote right now of being able to drive it out of here and at least bringing it back down the road. And then, and by the end of the year, I'd love to have it over to Atlantic Rapids. They've been another huge supporter. And
They're local too.
yep, they're another. And I deal with, look, I try desperately to deal with local people. Like you said, when it's a custom stuff, sometimes it's hard to deal with local people because nobody's doing it, right? So you either have to do it yourself or you find somebody in Russia made this body kit. A great friend of mine from the Canary Islands, if you haven't looked at this shifter cage, look at this custom shifter. This guy made one for his Corolla, and I found him online. He's the nicest guy ever. You definitely got to give him a Ricardo Ramoras. He RZR shifters. The cage came from the United Kingdom. Imagine getting a cage shipped. My original hard top came from Great Britain. This one didn't. This one came from California. So what I'm getting at here is like to build something incredibly unique that is exactly the way that you want it for exactly the purpose that you want it. You're going to have to work really hard, and you're going to have to go literally to the ends of the earth to get parts for it, or you're going to have to learn how to make parts for it, or you're going to have to build relationships with great people to make parts for it, right? It's
This
not
is definitely the Fast and Furious open up.
yeah. It's not, you know, this takes time, it takes work, it takes effort. And every time you change something, you put on a 1/2 inch bigger wheel, you put on a slightly different spacer, you put on anything, a slightly different spring spec, and it changes everything. Freaking Koenig, sponsor from the beginning.
Falcon Tire.
Yeah, Falcon Tire, another great sponsor from the beginning. I feel bad that they're in such like dirty shambles and they're collecting dust and
That's
haven't
their
been
best
driven.
condition.
But at the same time, those people again, so great. Falcon Tires just sent me tires, like, you know, like, and look again, I don't.
My size is.
Yeah, and I don't say those things to, you know, a lot of people are like, oh, well, that's how he's able to do it, is that he's out of. Yeah, yes, that's how I'm able to do it.
And that's the goal though, is to get sponsorships, so none of this is coming all of it out of pocket.
And here's the deal, what people don't understand is it took 6 years to get those sponsors. It's the first iteration of all of this stuff I paid for. The second iteration of all of this stuff I paid for. It's the third iteration of this stuff that now I'm getting for a discount, right? After working very hard and after touting these companies' names. Like, I don't send an email to some company I've never worked with before and don't intend on buying from them and be like, hey, I want a sponsorship. You know, no offense to the people that do that, but that's not how I do it. This is my fourth set of Koenig wheels. And on my fourth set, I sent him a message and I said, hey, I'm about to buy a fifth set. If you want to sponsor me, that'd be cool. If not, guess what? I'm about to buy my fifth set. That's the way I do it, right? So not a single sponsorship came because I sent one email. And I think people just don't understand that. You know, the companies that have sponsored me, I just make sure to tag and everything. I'm going to always promote them in videos like this over other stuff. But at the same time, if you're still a good company and don't sponsor me, I'm still saying good stuff about you because it's just the way that I am. But
it would be nice.
It would be nice. You know, Battle Version, they did the suspension arms. Again, they gave me a sponsorship with that, which was really nice. And again, maybe it was a super small sponsorship. You know, a lot of times I can't remember with some of these things, but any sponsorship counts and it's nice and it helped get it on the car. And I mean, all of these are Battle Version arms. You know, back in the day, they were actually the only option. Now there's a few more options. Oh, you know, a random thing I forgot about was this little jack point here. I actually had to add this into the design, but so you know, you can pull this out and then it ends up being a jack point that ends up going through my diffuser. So the diffuser has a small cutout there, so that way I have a single jack point in the back of the car. And end result is I do want to go to air jacks, but
that'd be so fantastic.
So yeah, you know, so 3 months, get the car back on the road, a couple more months to get it wrapped. Start of next year, you know, get it on tracks. You know, I plan on renting out a track probably towards the front end of next year and inviting a bunch of my friends and doing like a big track day. We'll invite some media people, you know what I mean, and get some people out and do a thing. And it's not that I got it like that. I'll split it up with the friends and do it. But it's, you know, you got to take stuff like this seriously, meaning, you know, I take it seriously in the fact that I don't want to risk other people's life. Meaning, when I put this on the track for the first time, I don't want other people on the track that I could hurt or injure or screw up. You know, it's a custom build, and I built it. That should scare anyone. You know, I was an engineer for 16 years, and I've done a lot of car stuff for the last 20-something years, but that doesn't mean I know how to build a race car, right? So the thought process here is get it on the track safely and have fun with it, and then start to get times with it and then see what it can do, you know. So next year is going to be a big year, but I'm excited. You know, if I don't let the other projects slow me up, then I think we'll be rocking pretty good, you know. I know there's still a lot of people online that are rooting for it to get finished and still follow it, which is really cool. You know, it's nice that people haven't lost interest over the time that it's taken me to complete it. I got to get this on the track. It's for me, you know what I mean? It's not for anybody else. Yeah, yeah.
Too far not to.
Well, that's it. It's not, people don't understand, like, when they say, oh, it's not going on track, or oh, blah, 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 they don't understand. Like, it's literally, that's what this is, that's what I'm doing this for. Like, I would just have built a street car that had a sweet wide body. Yeah. You don't need this. You don't need these things. And look, this is money I don't have. Like, I'm not balling. I don't have money. Like, so you don't do this unless your intent is to build a race car. This isn't something that you put so much of your soul, life, energy, time, and money that you don't have into to just drive it to a show and back. And there's no offense to that. I'm gonna have one of those too, but like,
you're gonna join the club.
Yeah, when people say, oh, it's not gonna race, blah, 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 they have no idea where my brain's at, because honestly, I'll never be able to have a full night of sleep until this hits a track.
Comment, share, subscribe, follow his Instagram, his YouTube, follow my YouTube. Have a good day.